December 2nd, 1805, Austerlitz. So what I'm doing here today is I'm saying, okay, what if there's a double bluff? The Third Coalition commanders are under Napoleon, and they're going to act as though they fell for it and begin their attack. Now what I've decided to do is to beef up the effectiveness of these three Russian corps here, is I've placed Doktorov in charge of the corps. So we get rid of two commands, set their chits aside, and now Doktorov is commanding the whole wing, and he will move and fight as one. Furthermore, they've been backed up by the Russian Guard cavalry, also reporting to Doktorov in this situation. And we've got Bagration with the advance guard, and Austerlitz with his 4th Corps, over here on the coalition left. The plan is for them to attack, hit hard, do all the work, but the Russians over here on the coalition right are also going to be effective, and Napoleon won't be able to bring things from the left over to his right. Enough jibber jabber. Let's see how this falls out. Now this is Austerlitz. So for the first 3 turns of the 8-turn day, basically until midday, there's heavy fog. In the early morning, Land's forces creep forward, and Napoleon's column comes up the Olmütz road, and the coalition begins moving forward. That completes the moving. Visibility is 1/3 of an infantry move. Just a few hundred yards. At this point, nobody sees anybody. And in fact, sound is muffled in the fog. We continue with mid-morning action. A reminder, all the lakes and streams are frozen on this map and treated as clear terrain. After crossing the Goldbach River, Napoleon's column, led by Murat's cavalry, begins deploying, and Lannes advances on the French left. The Austrian cavalry charges Soult's line. And here on the coalition right, Doktorov's troops don't attack so much as they run into the French column coming up the Olmütz road. Surprised, the French cavalry falls back, and Bernadotte's artillery opens up on the Russians, driving the front line back. The Austrian cavalry charges Soult's guns. The guns fire first, the hussars fall back, but then the cuirassiers' charge hits home, overrunning the artillery. Soult has a few battalions in the orchards, and they're hit by more Austrians. And now Bagration's advance guard runs into Legrand's division. As is usually the case, the Austrian infantry takes it on the chin, but Soult's men are forced back. And now it's late morning. The fog of Austerlitz clings greedily to the ground. The first thing that happens is Soult refuses the French right flank. He sends his cavalry forward, and Davout's 3rd Corps makes a late but welcome arrival. Seeing the French right in trouble, he sends his bags south towards the center. The Austrian 5th Cavalry Corps falls back. Kemmer's Corps occupies ground south of Solitare. Bagration presses the advance guard forward, places his artillery on the hilltop behind Solitare. Doktorov occupies defensive positions on the hills. He sends his cavalry around on the right and discovers Lannes' corps. Murat concentrates his cavalry left of the Olmütz road. Lannes' artillery deploys and fires at the charging cavalry. The lead elements are driven back. Austerlitz organizes elements of his 4th Corps and sends them forward. Bernadotte positions his artillery at a monastery on the hill. Napoleon joins the guard, and we resolve the late morning combat. The Russian Guard's heavy cavalry hits Lannes' men. The Russian cavalry are driven off and forced to fall back, but Lannes has suffered heavily. Here on the south side of the map, here you can see the compass rose. This way is north. And here, Austerlitz's 4th Corps attacks Soult. The attack is stopped, but with heavy losses. And Bagration's advance guard. Soult's men are driven back with heavy casualties. And Bagration runs into Davout's 3rd Corps. There's heavy fighting on the frozen lake. But Davout's men are victorious. And now it's midday and the fog lifts. Although Austerlitz's corps is very depleted, he wants to take this hill and put his artillery on this hill. His men drive forward. Having eliminated the artillery threat earlier in the morning, Liechtenstein's 5th Corps presses forward. Soult's men are driven back. Soult dresses his line. Davout attacks the advance guard. and Napoleon joins his Imperial Guard on a hilltop overlooking the battle, as Bessier brings the remaining units of the Guard forward, and Kenmeier's Hussars swarm, and Lannes' artillery opens up on the exposed flanks of the Russian infantry, sending half of it tumbling back. Outmaneuvered, Bagration's cavalry falls back, and his artillery fires on the exposed French infantry, driving it back. Bernadotte's artillery continues hammering at the Russian lines. Murat sends his cavalry forward in a glorious charge. First, the charge on the dispersed Russian guard cav. But the Russians give him what for before falling back. And how does the Russian infantry fare against the cavalry charge? They are forced back, but the cavalry is blown. Russian artillery is repositioned to get a better view, and Constantin edges his grenadiers forward. And Doctorow shows the French what he can do. He has his artillery open up on Murat's blown cavalry, forcing them back behind the hill, and he sends his cavalry charging forward. But for all the glory, there is little left to show. In his last desperate bid, he drives his infantry into Bernadotte's men. Though not destroyed, they are driven from the monastery and no one is left in control of it. The Russian attack is driven back. And here, in a swirling mass of cavalry, including Saint-Hilaire's best infantry, the battle rages. The infantry falls back, and the French cavalry is destroyed. Colloreut's attack to secure the hill for his artillery. Soult's men fall back. Midday passes, and the battle moves into the afternoon. Doctorow refuses the coalition right. Bagration has very little infantry left. He charges with his cavalry, and moves his artillery up on the hill he fought so hard to gain. And Lannes deploys Bags to bring his corps up to full strength. Colloreut moves to place his artillery on a hill. With Bags deployed, Bernadotte recovers. Kenmeier's Austrians recover. From their forward position on the Pratzen, Constantin's artillery opens up on the French line. Vendôme's troops fall back to find cover. Bessier's forms up his corps, although there's no obvious place for the Guard to make a breakthrough. Davout masters the counterattack, and Soult surges forward to foil the coalition's artillery plans. In the afternoon, all the heavy combat is in the south. The French charge on the coalition artillery. Mixed results, but there's no artillery on the hill, and Davout's action on the French right. A less than fully expected result, and now it's late afternoon. The French are uncertain what to do. Murat has moved his cavalry forward. Maybe he's got one last charge left. Napoleon orders Soult to decide the day. Vendôme drives on the Pratzen. Afraid that he'll get blamed for any failure, Bagration attacks. Lannes secures his artillery on a hill. Doctorow deploys Bags and fires on the French Lannes Corps here in the north, driving Lannes' men back. The Guard moves to support Soult. Bernadotte occupies Beausnetz, and his cavalry moves into a gully for cover from the artillery. He sets up headquarters in the monastery. Colloreut appears and orders a counterattack, and his artillery fires on the French right in front of them. Kenmeier's Austrian Hussars countercharge Soult's attack. Davout is getting overwhelmed and he falls back. His cavalry rides away with the rearguard action. Late afternoon combat, the Hussars on the scattered French battalion. They ride them down. And now Vendôme's charge on the Pratzen. The Russians are able to pull their artillery to safety and hold the hill against all French assaults. It's early evening. Napoleon orders the final glorious charge. The grenadiers charge to silence Doctorow's artillery. It is swept aside. The French Guard, heavy cavalry, beautiful horses, charge the Russian grenadiers. But the grenadiers form their squares, and the Guard retreats. Kenmeier, with unusual elan and flair, attacks with his hussars and his sturdy infantry. Liechtenstein's cavalry charges. In fact, the cuirassiers do their thing and they charge, wiping out some scattered French battalions. And his hussars outflank Soult's men. Bagration sent his cavalry forward, making sure Davout's men keep moving along. Soult reforms his line. Now we move on to the last turn of the day, the last effort. The French have lost 9 blocks. They can lose a total of 13 before they break, so 4 more blocks than they break. The coalition forces have lost 8 blocks. They can lose 14 blocks before they break. The French guard attacks, but the grenadiers hold them off and fall back. And so the day ends. Napoleon was denied his great victory, which, by the way, is a very hard thing to do for the French, to win at Austerlitz. There's a reason why they view it as Napoleon's greatest battle. Good game.